Welcome, everyone, to Marijuana Justice. My name is Chelsea Higgs Wise, and if this is your first time, welcome. And if you are a returner, welcome back. I'm your host, and this is just a reminder that this space right here is where we center humanity, and we believe that cops, prosecutors, and judges will always find a way to use the justice system more aggressively and with more bias against Black and Brown people. This reality in the Commonwealth and the country is what we are seeing across the globe. I'm really here to also talk about a win that we just had last week. If you've been following along, this is the time to go ahead and celebrate your noisemakers. But it was an important week last week for the Commonwealth. As you know, Marijuana Justice and the Canada Justice Coalition believes that no new crimes must be part of equitable legalization. And so last week, we were really thankful that the General Assembly reaffirmed this stance, and they rejected the governor's amendments that would have actually added a misdemeanor crime for possession over 2 ounces. And we're really committed that Virginia is here to legalize it right, which means prioritizing people and communities most impacted by the war on drugs. And creating new crimes will never do that. So just in case you missed it, let's do a brief rundown. So in session, there was actually no bills passed for the legalization sale, the commercial sales of adult use cannabis. And that made some people really upset. And that made some legislators even say, well, that's not going to do. We need more cops. We need more public safety. Having this wild, wild west, again, using very criminal language around our people and our communities means that we deserve more policing. Well, what the new governor here in Virginia, Governor Youngkin, ended up doing was that one of the bills that went through both chambers, Senate and House, and got passed was a bill about shapes of CBD and cannabis products. Well, this shapes bill was really important because they did not want people to make edibles in the shape of cartoons, of certain things that would be attractive to children. And with that bill that passed, it got to the governor's desk, and he said, hold up. Let me see what else needs to be in here. The governor added a few amendments to this with a whole new bill that really basically changed the intent of the bill. It brought more criminalization, as I mentioned before, that these misdemeanors would have put people back into jail, where right now it is a civil penalty for $25. So from a $25 ticket, y'all, to being incarcerated. It also would have banned Delta 8. Now, Delta 8 isn't something that we really talk about here on this platform, but when it comes down to it, if something is banned, that means there also must be a penalty for it. That means there's a new crime for it. And that means the Delta ban was, you guessed it, a new crime. And that's just not something that we can also really champion at all. I would also just want to say, from my own strategic lens, and also because I listen to many of the committee meetings and watching the committee meetings, participating in the committee meetings, Delta 8 is not illegal across the United States. And banning it here in Virginia for the smaller entrepreneurs and many Black and Brown entrepreneurs that are selling Delta 8 in Virginia, they would have been banned from this. And what it means then is that later on, if the demand is still there for Delta, guess who would have been able to start selling it eventually? The medical operators. That's right. It was a lot of conversation in committee about if this is out there, what it should be tested, who should be doing it. And the conversation was about banning. But what I also heard was an opportunity for medical operators to say, this is another product that only we need to sell later on in the industry. So what we really did there is, again, we protected small entrepreneurs, we protected people against policing. And then another part of this bill would have also raised the age limit from 18 to 21 on CBD. And this is, again, a new crime. So all in all, we are really sending a message to the legislators to say, as we go on this legalization journey, we are going to hold your feet to the fire to make sure those that were most impacted when marijuana was completely illegal are continuing, and those same people are continuing to be the most impacted. So we want to make sure that we're not adding more onto them. And we also want to make sure that they are the first to benefit from any legalization. So tell me, how in the world are we supposed to be benefiting if we are also criminalized? Well, ladies, gentlemen, all family, that just means that we are actually not going to be the beneficiaries of that. And that's why we have to continue to hold the line on equitable legalization that actually leads to a dismantling of the war on drugs. And if that's not it, then we don't want it. I'm really excited for our conversation today because it's someone that I've gotten to know over the last few months. Her passion is here, and she really understands the need for a equitable legalization process that's fair to us all. We all show up from a very different perspective. We all show up with our own passions around cannabis. And it's important that we all connect on the main pieces of values of valuing people over profit. And that's what we're really here for. So I'm excited to announce this guest, Charlene Morring. She is the principal owner of the law firm of Charlene A. Morring. She's a Norfolk native, and she attended Old Dominion University, where she received a Bachelor's of Science, Political Science, and was awarded the prestige Kaufman Scholar at Old Dominion University. She was observed as University of Richmond's E.W. Hudgens Scholar. Both scholarships recognize her commitment to community. No surprise there. Charlene is also a member of the International Cannabis Bar Association. She's committed to social equity and inclusion in Virginia's new budding industry, and was a speaker at Virginia's first South Can Conference. So I'm really excited for you all to meet Charlene Morring. Come on, Charlene.
Hold on. I can't hear you. Hold on.
Uh-oh. We got some
Evan,
technical
I lost sound. Can you hear me?
We got you. Oh no.
Hold on. I lost sound, so I can't hear you, Chelsea.
No
Evan,
problem.
if you can hear me, help.
Yep. Evan, you want to maybe take her in the back room and see if we can work that out? All right. All right, y'all. So while we have some technical difficulties happening with Charlene, and you can already tell she's excited to be here, I just love to tell you a little bit how I met Charlene while she gets started. Over the last few months, we've really been connecting with people all across Virginia that care about social equity, that care about small business owners, that care about how are we going to benefit in this industry. Well, Charlene is one of those folks that really has been pounding the pavement, and she really showed up. She really showed up when it came to signing on to minorities for medical marijuana. She is one of the Virginia members there, and she's really just been fighting and working with the ED, Antoine Hines. Hey, Antoine. For a minute now, and speaking her mind and making sure that we have an opportunity to really be involved. So Charlene has been kicking the pavement with M4MM. And if you haven't been watching, you've really been missing a great partnership budding right there. M4MM and the Canna Justice Coalition linked together to really initiate and launch the petition that we sent most recently to the legislators. That's right. So last week, we didn't just sit around and wait for the decision from the legislators about the governor's amendments. We were organizing. And if you were one of the people that signed that petition, we want to say a big thank you. We had over 1,300 people sign the petition and say we want no new crimes. And we were really able to deliver that petition. Check out our social media at THC Justice Now, and you can see a little bit how we were able to deliver that petition. But Charlene and M4MM were a big part of that. So I'm excited again to introduce to you all Charlene A. Morring. Can we get Charlene back?
Here. I won't touch the phone.
All right. Well, welcome, Charlene. You can hear me now?
I can hear you. Thank you, Chelsea, for such a warm warm introduction, and thank you for having me. I am humbly here tonight, just in awe at what you and your organization, Marijuana Justice, has been doing, the work and the results that we've seen as a result of your work. And so I'm at your beck and call. I support this. I support everything that is and represents justice. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlene. And this is really how we show up for one another. So I appreciate this. And like I was just saying before, when I heard your passion, when I heard your values, I was really, really intrigued. So let's just start out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We heard a little bit about your background. Very much into community, but how did you even get into law in the first place?
Well, I'm going to share something that not a lot of people know. And like right now, I have been elected to the Virginia State Bar as bar counsel. I have also been appointed on a big board at ODU for the Women's Initiative Network. And I'm very proud of that. But what I'm most proud of is that I'm just a little girl from the hood, and they had a lot of friends that were all over the place. I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. I went to Norview Elementary, Norview Middle, and Norview High, public school all the way. And I didn't have a perfect teenage life. I had a baby when I was really young. So graduated from high school, was walking across the stage and didn't even know I was pregnant.
Wow.
And what really got me into law was I, like most young girls who want to go into a club or something, used my sister's ID when I was young, and got caught with it, and did not have a person representing me and my interest that looked like me.
Right.
Ended up with a felony.
Oh, wow, Charlene.
And not a lot of people know that. Of course,
Yeah.
I tell two bars, every federal organization, and everything I ever applied for. But there you have it. I have done a lot, and not many people know that I am a felon.
Wow.
And I say that with a smile today because now I have this booming business. I've overcome odds that even professors, when I was at school, oh, you can't do that. You gotta, people just shutting doors and just assuming. It was like the lowest one you can get.
Right.
And it was because I used my sister ID.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that my passion for justice came in that very moment because I had no one to fight for me.
Right.
No one cared about whether or not I was resilient enough to say, regardless of my situation, that I was going to overcome.
Right.
Been just another statistic, going job from job, struggling, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't going to be me. I was not going to allow someone's inability to represent me and my interests to affect God's plan on my life. And so not a lot of people know that.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And I share that now with a lot of pride. Of course, I probably need to write a book, but when you talk about justice, when you talk about getting doing it right, it really it's real personal to me.
Yeah.
And so the experiences that I've had over the course of the years, having to put that down on certain applications and things, I know what it's like. I know what it's like when it's just been wrong. And so now you have cannabis.
Right. Right.
You have it coming.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a lot of people that don't have my resilience, don't have my bar licenses, don't have the experience. And we know what the system looks like. So the interest from cannabis is very personal from the justice perspective for me. So.
So Charlene, thank you so much for sharing that very personal story. And we carry all sorts of assumptions and bias with us. And so just looking at you, hearing your accomplishments,
You never know.
but never know, right? And number one, we shouldn't be assuming that about folks anyway. But it really just continues to show that you never know who you should not be counting out, and we need to tell
Right.
these legislators as well that they cannot judge us based on what they think they know about us.
Right. Right.
So, because if the only thing they ever saw about you was their criminal record, that would be a completely different idea of somebody that we're looking at right now. Right? We would have two different ideas in our heads, unfortunately, just the way that our country is written. So I'm just really blessed that you shared that, but I'm also just really proud of you. You know what I mean? I'm really, really proud of you. So,
well, it was a tough time,
mm-hmm.
and I'll be honest and frank, it took me a very long time to wear it with pride.
Yeah.
And I wear it with pride now because now I teach ethics to other lawyers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I wear my transparency, my integrity, because I know what it doesn't look like.
Right.
And
right.
I know from being an attorney for more than 20 years and being a Black woman attorney for this long, the badge of honor that I have to wear that most people don't.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah. And so I'm wearing it a little more prouder now. There's a lot of people who don't know that, and I don't care.
Right. And some folks, they don't need to, right? Because they're already looking at a Black woman and they jealous and having all their thoughts. So let's just keep up their mind.
I'm a diversity supplier. That was 30 years ago, and I'm happy and doing my business now and doing it with transparency and honor and trying to avoid that happening to any other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does you mentioned that cannabis is, another passion for yours, and you can understand why cannabis legalization is so important for particularly people that you represent. Can you give us just some examples of just like your day to day of, hey, I deal with this on a regular basis, and this is why I know cannabis has to be done in a certain manner?
So 85, if not 90% of my clientele are African American or people of color. And in that, and I'll start with my Hispanic community. A lot of times they're in construction, they're doing work that, a lot of people, very risky work. And if they're like injured or something, first thing they go to do is to see if they have marijuana in their system. Right?
Wow.
His way, I mean, I had one man, this is no lie, broke his neck. And he was Mexican. And first thing they want to do, oh, you must have cannabis in your system. So there's that aspect. And then there's the pain aspect. I represent injured workers. So a lot of my African American clients who are searching for medical treatment that's not just going to drug them up. I'm a big holistic person. Okay. So, and I'm not a person that's going to turn my nose up to anything. So when they come in here and they say, I'm going to try to convince this doctor, that doctor, and then these certain doctors, because they want to push certain medications on us. No, they don't want to do it. And then you have all of this, well, you can go online and get this. And so then it started coming up. And then my husband is a disabled veteran. And you've seen in the headlines here recently, a lot of suicides. There's a lot of PTSD involved in that. So I began to get that interest. But the straw that really broke the camel's back is my father. So he's
Mm.
90 and he is legally blind now. And he was told a few years back, and this really kind of drove me, that had he smoked cannabis, it would have saved his eyesight, because he had fought glaucoma for most of, I guess, for the last 25 years.
Wow.
And now the man that did everything at the house but build a brick,
Mm.
um, can't see, can't
See.
drive. And, there was this stigma,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
around cannabis. And so I really started researching it and going across the nation, visiting and just trying to educate myself, because um, what started happening to my father, his eyes, is happening to me. And even though my eyesight is good, it is something, he has macular degeneration that
Yep.
could be all down the line.
It's
And
been, yeah,
so,
kind of.
yeah, yeah. So, it's kind of a myriad of things, but really it hit home. And when
Mhm.
it hit home, I was like, all right, let's start to see. And so what I saw, was just a disconnect. And then when I started hearing about the scutterbug in Virginia, I was like, let me read this. It's like,
Yeah, this bill.
and then that's when my light bulb went off, and I started sleeping with it and talking, to some people in the community, a lot of people in the community, okay, and um, of different backgrounds, of different influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to hear repeated things that I knew was floating.
Mm.
And so, and one of the things is, a lot of the attorneys, they are running. They don't want to touch it right now, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to be, in front of something with such a stigma,
Yeah.
but it's coming. And if we want to do it right, we
Mm.
have to deal with the realization and get it right. And
That's
so, whatever room that I'm in, it's okay, let's get it right.
right. Mm-hmm.
Let's get it right. We have enough examples from what's going on across the nation and other states
Mm-hmm.
to at least get it right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, just you said so much right there. And I really appreciate you bringing the different parts that brought you here to cannabis, because the workers part is such an important piece. I was a supervisor in social work for a long time before I did this, and I worked at many facilities. And anytime my staff or folks would come and they get hurt on the job, our protocol is to send them to the doctor. I had to learn very quickly, because I care about my people. I said, look, you have a choice here about going to this doctor. I want to also let you know that they're going to test you for weed. If you test positive, you, we will not be liable to cover any of your injuries, as well as you will lose your job. Do you want to go to the doctor? And they would look at me and be like, hell no, I'm fine, right? Or whatever. Normally it would be in that sort of vein, but it became something that I had to learn to just put in my rhetoric, because many other supervisors weren't doing this. We were losing really good DSPs, and it was just something that we did not know was happening. And to speed up a little bit for folks too, that have been watching marijuana legalization in Virginia, since Charlene brought up the workers' point, this past session, the senator that proposed the bill, Senator Eben, in 2021, he included protections for workers that would say that their employers would have to be neutral to union organizing. Well, in 2022, y'all, that same senator took it out of the bill and said, nope, we don't need that protection anymore. That was a Governor Northam thing. I don't stand by that. It was very odd to me, to be honest, but many union workers, labor organizers, had done a lot of work in 2021 to make sure that those types of protections were there. And it was just a very small piece, a line in there about the workers' protections. And unfortunately, I just want to let everyone know that's listening to Charlene in the way that she is fighting for workers, is that we have to do the same thing in this legalization bill.
Yes, it is very important. And I think you brought up a good point as far as, I mean, that just goes to the stigma with it. Just imagine if they do a criminalization, right? And you go get tested from work and you got some shady employer that now wants to tip off someone. And or you have it in your locker or something like that, something that you feel is legal, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden now you got a criminal charge, because I have seen it. And some employers just can't be trusted. I'm sorry. And here you go, you got some criminal charge, you've lost your job, as well as you may be injured. So you just got hit with a triple whammy for something that someone else is selling tons of.
Metric tons.
Yeah, without any recourse.
Right. And then not to mention the consequences of that charge later, right? The barriers that are going to come up because of that charge.
Barriers and challenges to getting a job, employment, school, housing. Yes, housing. In this true story, as soon as July 1st hit, about a month later, a woman, and this is a true story, and I'm representing her now. She was working on federal property and had a little edible the weekend, trips, falls, they go testing.
Yep. And because it's on federal property and where it's still illegal, even though she's in the state of Virginia,
where she could do it in the comfort of her own home.
Right.
Yeah. So Eben made a mistake, and we'll need to add that on something, because unionization and protection for workers, there have been a lot of studies, I'm sure you know, Chelsea, that in states that have actually passed it, they have more consistency with the workers. The workers are more focused at work. And so it all these stigmas as it relates to cannabis and how easy people can, because all that tells me is it was an easy buy-in, it's an easy buyout, right? Right?
Say it again, Charlene, and explain maybe what you mean by that.
Well, you know, at one point when Northam was there, he is a people pleasing, right? We're going to get it. Yes, we're all for workers. You know, Virginia holds the steel workers, one of the largest unions in the nation. The ACLU, you know, there's a lot of AFL CIOs here. There's a lot of unions here. The elevator workers, we just got lots. We got the longshoremen. Lots of unions here. Virginia knows the importance of unions. So, and I'm sure that piece will hit home to some of their constituents, right?
Right.
But now it goes away. Why? What happened? So when I say buy in, buy out, that's politics that happen, and it shouldn't be at the expense of the workers.
It should not be.
Period.
Or the people, right? Because workers are people.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just really emphasize what you said, because people recently with this election have told me that they just lost hope. We need to maybe just pass something. I've got all sorts of things. And what you just said is what I'm really trying to get to people, is that just as quickly as it was changed this session, it can change again. Right. And everyone should be able to buy into that after watching 2020 and the shift. I mean, the neck that we have what's going on in our political environment. So I really just wanted to lift that worker piece that you had mentioned, because it also goes straight directly right back into the legalization bill. And because you also brought up another piece, this is what happens when
And
organizers and advocates
we
and
can
lawyers
talk
start talking.
today.
Is that they mentioned something about your employer snitching on you. Well, in the Virginia law that we passed in 2021, an extra $1 million were given to law enforcement to become DREs, drug recognition experts. I think this is important for Virginians to continue to watch because DREs is not just training for law enforcement. In other states like New Jersey, they're actually putting in DRE training at the job so that your coworker can snitch on you. And exactly what Charlene is talking about. So if we normalize this DRE for a legal substance, like why are you the fact that we're training people to recognize it now that it's legalized, y'all should send a big red flag, right? But I want to make sure that we lift Charlene's point by saying this is the risk and also show how it's already showing up in our language that we need to fight back for.
Yeah.
So again, that DRE is a really scary point.
Yeah, that and it will happen.
Come on.
It's gonna so people understand. I know when you talk about cannabis, I mean, yes, okay, so we can partake in it, but we don't want it to just be another way to incarcerate people, to criminalize them, right?
Right.
And or to affect them economically. And so by these measures, it's almost like my mom used to say, well, the rich get richer and the poor get poor.
That's
Because
it.
shut them out from jobs, shut them out from opportunities. And you'll get those on their high horse. They'll be making decisions. And of course, we know who the targets will be. And it's just a fact. It's not going to change. It's just going to be done a different way. And so to your point, Chelsea, you're exactly right. Yeah, we still need to be stomping. It
That's
has to be done right. Just getting something, and I've heard that from certain people too, and that's why they were willing to kind of say, oh, and I, like you said, well, I'm glad. This was not the right piece.
This was not the way.
No, it wasn't. So, because we also know once we get it done, the uphill battle.
Right. Once we pass this, y'all, it will be the floodgates will have been open. And how do you close floodgates? That in any movie we see that the door usually breaks.
Right. And basically Virginia will use, because we're a commonwealth. And so for people who don't know, I'm going to tell you a really bad statistic. Virginia ranks 49th out of 50 states for their workers' compensation system.
Whew. Now remember, but I thought we were number one for business, Charlene.
Well, see the difference, right? So the employers they love it.
They love it.
They love it. But the workers and the people, and if you're in this state, you're either going to be an employer, you're going to have employees, or you're going to be an employee yourself, right? Unless you just whatever. And so in that sense, so we already have that dynamic. So what Virginia is going to do, and why it's so important that we get it right with this legislation, they're going to look to what most judges and what most lawmakers look to: legislative history.
Right. And remember, y'all. And I was just telling folks earlier today that Virginia is the oldest legislative body in this United States, which means they have the most experience oppressing folks of African ancestry. Yeah. I mean, that's right there. That's just the 400 plus years. So it's just that fact. And thank you for bringing up that statistic about us 49th for workers' comp, and then showing us again that number one in business. And Why, again, we do not need to have that same stat in cannabis industry. We can actually legislate it and regulate it differently so it doesn't just take off with commercial capitalism like everything else has been. Charlene, you are in the 757. We're over here in the 804 area. For folks that are not familiar with the 757, can you just kind of give a brief overview of the area, maybe how it's separated and what it looks like?
Oh, well, okay. So
Your
757,
best impression, best
which,
description.
yeah, so it's a beautiful area. Of course, we have Virginia Beach. We have Norfolk, which used to be one of the largest cities in the state. There's Suffolk, P-Town, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and some other little counties, and Hampton and Newport News. If I can say anything, it's just, why can't we all just get along, right? So the reason why they came up with the 757, and they had this whole initiative for 757 Connect, because you could stay, and this is a true story, you could stay in a Norfolk hotel and they would not mention Virginia Beach.
Oh.
So you can have a tourist that has no clue, could be from Spain or whatever, come out and they're not going to tell you to go to Virginia Beach. So they don't play nice in the sandbox a lot around here, but the area is really beautiful. There's a large, there's what I like to say, there are the haves and the haves not. There's not a lot of the middle. So that can always be quite interesting for just the dynamic of the people. But
what are some of the demographics?
Yeah, so there's I would say it's heavily populated. I think white, then African American. Virginia Beach has a huge Filipino and Hispanic community. So that's about it. We used to say it was just all white and black, but the Filipino community in Virginia Beach and the Hispanic community in Norfolk and Virginia Beach are big. Portsmouth, dynamic, basically black, probably about 85 to 90% black. There's a mix in Norfolk, a larger black population. Virginia Beach, of course, is large. And so, I don't know the exact statistics, but it's a little melting pot now, to some extent.
And I think it's important for people to, and I'm in Richmond, so pardon me that I put all of y'all in the same bucket down there in 757, but when we're talking about legislatively, electorally, which impacts these bills so much, that 757 has such an influence on our legislators, on our legislation. And if anyone is also following certain criminalization of not just Black folks and not just folks in general, but particularly young people, and the 757 is one of the highest places of criminalization of young folks. And if you know the Canada Justice Coalition, that's why we have two different organizations of young people, because we realize this is our next generation of legacy and they're already being criminalized. And if we don't do this the right way, cannabis will just be another layer of criminalization for them. And I know 804, we used to be a chocolate city here in Richmond, sort of gentrification, but that same 757 area has that urban feel a lot of times that other Virginia areas doesn't. And also has these stats of high crime. But to me, that also just means like, what do we owe the 757 when we talk about cannabis legalization?
Well, I mean, I know I had read a statistic for Virginia Beach, and it almost made my heart cry about Black and brown people and how they were disproportionately traffic stops, convictions when it comes to marijuana. And so I think what we owe is what the entire state deserves, right? An opportunity to not have to go back. I
Mm.
have 5 young men right now that have pulled their criminal history for me prior to all of this scutterbug, want to do different things. And it's just like, is this going to be expunged? That's not what I do, right?
Right.
But they want to go to school, they want to do this, they want to do that, and oh, but mine's was actually a felony, mine's was this. What we owe is taken away,
Right.
and no new crimes. No one should have to. I know what it feels like to have to feel like you got to walk that straightest line,
Yeah.
because you dare do it, you're going right back. So even if they were expunged, even if they got a job and they overcame this hurdle, who wants to constantly, okay, I can't be around this, I can't do this, even though it's legal. No one wants to live like that. So I think what we owe is getting it done right, no new crimes.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely owe opportunity,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Owe opportunity, um, and in an economic way that's fair, and
Right.
that's not capped,
Mm.
that's not going to be filled with so much paperwork to dissuade them from
Mm-hmm.
doing it. And that's it. We owe them no fear and an economic opportunity. And that's truly should be done for everybody.
Yeah.
And, black, brown, whatever. And so, yeah, and it happens. There's some really, Portsmouth is, you know, rampant with a lot of people who've gotten busted for marijuana and things of that sort. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and my next question, Charlene, and if anyone's watching and you have questions, please drop them in. We'll be taking those in just a few minutes. But you're really answering a lot of our questions right
Uh,
now, just listening. No, it's please keep doing this. This has been so informative. You said that folks really deserve an opportunity. In your vision for legalization, do you think that's our biggest fight right now? Is creating a bill that will actually yield fair opportunity?
um, when it comes to retail sales, yes.
Mm.
I think that there are a lot of people that are just going to want to be users and not have to look behind their back, right?
Come on.
We're going to have the consumers. Not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, or to get in the game, but there are some brothers and sisters and amigos, amigas that are entrepreneur in nature, that have passions,
Hmm.
whether it be for manufacturing, cooking, growing, or just could be very knowledgeable in the field,
Yeah.
tattooed up, I don't care,
Right.
um, but know their stuff. And one of the concerns that I see is that, the market is not going to create the opportunity, right?
Hmm.
And so the people that want the good stuff and that want to really be a cannabis connoisseur of
Hmm.
sort is going to be limited, because they're going to get the junk from big pharma, and the economic opportunity for someone who could really give us something different is not going to be there.
Right. So you're also bringing up not just the opportunity for the entrepreneurs, but the consumer's choice and access to what we even have a choice to purchase.
Right. And right now, the way the legislation, even what Evan was trying to get through, I mean, so you want to go out and they cap you, and they
Yeah.
tell big pharma that they
Can you
could do it.
can you say just really quickly on what caps are and that sort of thing?
Right. So in the legislation, they talk about and they have done this in other states as well. Some work, some doesn't. So, they're going to be giving out these licenses, right? And everybody think, all right, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this and cannabis, whatever, whatever. Well, if you want to go the social equity route, which is what they're saying is what will be, oh, we're going to help those who were affected and, graduated from HCBU, or if you meet this criteria that we feel is right, and we're going to give you some access, and then we're going to let you get in the game, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the capping goes, all right. So they're trying to put caps on the amount of licenses. So they have these groups, and they're saying, well, we're only going to have, I believe, 400 retail licenses throughout the state. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be very arbitrary by the Cannabis Advisory Board. And then I think they took off the caps, at least they're proposing to take off the caps on the other licenses. But if you're a social equity applicant, and this to me is not constitutional, and someone, I don't care who hearing me, should probably, if they pass it, you should fight it. But if you're social equity, say Big Pharma, everybody else can grow and do whatever they want. So if you want to grow $150,000 square feet facility and be a force in the system, you can. But if you get social equity, they're going to cap you at 8,000 square feet. So if you get one license, so then you're not really creating an economic opportunity for that individual, right, or that group. You're just saying, you're just putting a little bit of lipstick on it and saying, we'll let you in. But you're going to struggle.
Right.
Because the guy over here is going to overtake you.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I could just go on for days, because that's just wrong. It's not constitutional. It's clearly discriminatory.
Right. And just to say it like really succinctly is that they want to cap the number of licenses, which means there will be less opportunity for licenses. They removed the caps, but they wanted the CCA to come, the Cannabis Control Authority, to regulate the number of licenses, not in the code. So there will still be some types of caps, y'all. And that is something that we have to fight. And then for the social equity that they were proposing this past session for early sales, that is what they're talking about with that micro license as well, for that 8,000 square feet, which I had to go and find some folks out in Illinois. And I said, I need someone to run some numbers. Is this even business profitable? Right? Like with this type of canopy cap, right? So there's a license cap and then the canopy cap of how big your facility can be. Is this even workable? Because there was in Illinois, there was a 14,000 square foot, and they were saying that was no way that anybody could ever make a profit off of that type of square footage. And so these numbers that they're coming up with arbitrarily are really just like, let's throw it out there. Let's have a compromise instead of actually what's going to be workable for us. And that's going to make us a profit and a real opportunity, not something that we can start out and then have to get bought out of very quickly just to say that we got something, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, again, what we hear far too often is that, well, if minorities get a license and then they sell it, that's still y'all making money, right? And it's like, please don't set us up to just sell our license.
Mm-hmm. Or set us up to fail.
Woo. Right.
Because that's what it is.
It is.
Anybody who, and they know that. They set us up to fail. Yeah. And that's why it really blew my mind. So that's another reason why I did not agree with the proposal, right?
And just a reason why, I asked if that was one of the most important things, and there's so many important things in this legalization process, but I think it's important for everyone to realize, for there to be real opportunity in this industry, we're going to have to get nuanced, y'all. We're going to have to talk to each other as they propose different ideas. We've got to have our own and say, no, this is what we want. This is what we've researched. This is what works. Do this. Because as of right now, and I can even say this as someone that's into this and in some of these rooms, is that there's too much negotiating without our demands. And so.
Yeah. And it needs to be concerted effort. One of the things that I pride myself on, and again, I tell people, they say, well, what makes you different? If we understand that we have the power, and we have the power because we have the culture.
Whew, it's true.
It is power in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
All right. A lot of these big brands are doing a lot of things to rein in our culture.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying, but it is unauthentic, inauthentic. It is, we can see right through it.
It's
But,
cartoon.
mm, mm-hmm,
It's horrible. And so, if we can just realize that,
yeah, yeah,
leverage,
that's,
and leverage the culture. I mean, say this is what the culture want. This is what we want,
right,
because then we have to do it right. We've
right.
seen, like I just said, you've seen what happens when it's done wrong. It could just be a nightmare for all
Mm-hmm.
of us. And nobody. I've been, hey, so and so's giving out seeds, or come here, they're giving out marijuana. I get all types of questions. Well, can I go? Can I go to this truck? Can I do this? Can I do that? You know, everybody wants to be a piece of the culture. Um,
Yep.
but the culture, if we can just really leverage that. And when I say culture, I'm just saying the culture of today, of being real,
Mm-hmm.
of being Black and brown people that demand respect, uh,
Mm-hmm.
progress, and
Right.
um, yeah.
And I really liked what you said about we do need to do this as an effort together, right? And I'm constantly in conversations with people. And last weekend there was a national cannabis festival that I was at, and next year we going. Charlene, you coming
Yep.
with me? Um, it was a great time. And but what I'm still really realizing is even folks that are in these conversations, holding space for these are trying to have a conversation that's actually for us. And it's awkward and it's actually putting more labor on us because we have to come in and fix it and straighten them out. And it's now realizing like, where is everyone's place? Because there is a place for everyone in this legalization process, but it
Mm-hmm.
might not necessarily be talking about something that you just don't know, something that you don't live.
Right.
Right. And that's why we need to be able to come together and say, I know this. Well, you know this, and we got this, and we
Bam.
come together,
Mm-hmm.
um, and really have some conversations because we need to be able to talk about it before we get to these legislators. Right at the end, y'all, of session, not in veto session, but in regular session, there were all these compromises that were coming. And at the end, it was very obvious that they were actually trying to split social equity advocates and small business advocates. And we were like, we the same.
Yeah.
And it was like that's not actually going to fly. And so if we're not able to come together and recognize these things, then we are going to be split, and then we're all going to lose.
Yeah.
And it's really important that folks from all across the Commonwealth are coming together and having these conversations. I am so delighted that a brilliant Black woman lawyer is now not just in this industry, but in our state doing some really great things. You know, I was listening to you before and listening to some other talks that you've had, and just how you've also stepped up in your community with like gift cards and filling in gaps and things that you also just don't hear from law firms, especially private law firms, right? That are really just here actually for the justice piece of it. So I just really want to say thank you for being in the space in the Commonwealth, for your voice. And
Um, it's listen. You say the Commonwealth. For those, that is, when you talked about the 400 years of, law, yeah. And so
mhm,
that dynamic still stands today. And that's
yeah,
why the work that you are doing is so important. There is
we,
no change. Well, but I'm going to give credit where credit is due. And for those who don't know, I was so excited when I learned just how much work you did, because that JLARC study was like my Bible really on, okay, what are we missing? Because we're still missing some pieces in the legislation. That's a whole nother story.
Right.
Um, and that could create jobs for some brothers, because I love the transportation piece, and it's just, they need to create brothers could really benefit from that. With
Yeah.
CDLs, getting a truck, and
Yeah.
anyway. But for the work that you've done, because that JLARC study at least started to set the tone, a very good tone,
Mm-hmm.
for getting it right, for creating the legislation right. And of course, now they're, like you said, kind of rubbing some things away or trying.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll
But
be.
we do. Right. We're going to keep moving. And we do have that JLARC study. If anyone isn't familiar, in 2020 session, January, February, before COVID, before the uprising, Virginia wanted to decrim. And we were really saying repeal the prohibition, make simple possession legal. And when we saw that they were not going to do that, we said, well, let's create a study so that when we come back, you don't just have to listen to us, you have to listen to your own study. And this was a move that an organizer in New York had mentioned to me. And within the bill, there was a work group that was going to be put together, but we had already seen who was in part of that work group. They would not put us on that work group. And so we went and worked with Senator McClellan's office to propose the JLARC study. And now it is the most used document in this entire conversation. And they
Yep.
told us not to do it. They told us we didn't need it. They said, we got all the experts. And it took a veteran Black woman senator to come on in and get it passed, because she read the language of the work group and it didn't have equity. It didn't have expungement. It didn't have the pieces in it that we knew were foundational to doing this right. So thank you for recognizing that, and thank you for reading that, because I was one of the excited ones to read it. But it helps to know that it was really a useful tool, and we can still bring it back, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it goes to that legislative history that we were talking about, and the reasons why the fight is so important to get it right.
right,
Because you
right.
have a bit of a great roadmap that is very simple, dynamic, addresses all the issues, really focuses on why it's necessary. You don't know how many times I have to explain to people, and I've gotten some rolled eyes and turned backs, or because some people don't even want to know why we even need social equity.
Right, right. Well, we know why we need it. This is your last opportunity. If you have any questions, you want to drop them in. Thank you for everyone that has joined us. And if you are rewatching this on our YouTube page, thank you for joining. Make sure you share all of this information with folks. And Charlene, tell folks one more time how they can follow you, how they can support you.
You can follow me on my law firm. It's Morring Law Firm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. It's just me, Charlene Morring. And yeah, I will make sure I promote this on my page. I had a little death in the family, so a little bit of craziness going on last week, but I will promote it. I'm all in for this, and I'm not shy to give my opinion. And you can find us when you go online. You can shoot us an email and reach me directly. So yeah.
That's great. And if you have any more questions, Charlene has also tagged all of our social media, so you can find her there. And I'm sure this is not the last time our audience will be hearing from you, Charlene. So again, I just want to thank you for your work. Thank you for showing up. And we would not be having this conversation if we won't just both end the work and the
Just
scramble
get
of it all.
done. Yeah, yep, get done. And everything happens for a reason. And so I'm sure we'll both be eating our Wheaties this fall.
True. And I hope you at home watching, you're repping up, getting your rest this summer, and ready to join us. So thank you so much, Charlene. Thank you. And everyone, have a great night. And we will catch you right back here for the June Marijuana Monthly. We have a spectacular surprise for you. We've got a panel with some artists, and we've got a premiere of a short film that has to do with reuniting our families and keeping us free. So we're really excited for that. Join us, and we'll see you next month, y'all.
All
Peace.
right. Bye-bye.